Thank you for watching our webinar on breaking down silos across project management tools with Jim Patterson. If you enjoy this topic, please explore our YouTube channel for more recorded presentations and follow us on LinkedIn to stay in the know.
Thanks for joining, everybody. Now, this topic today is probably one of the primary reasons that people come to OnePlan to find a solution to the scenarios that we're going to talk about today. The proliferation of project management tools across an organization and the data silos it creates is not insurmountable. And we're going to talk about how we can get across that and bridge that today. So let's get started. With the proliferation of project management tools today, most companies have at least 5 or 6 or some as many as 13 project management tools according to a recent study done. And all these tools have a loyal following among the departments that use them, and they have a particular reason why they did it. Unfortunately for senior leadership and our PMOs and our EPMOs, that means that there's no visibility by default across the organization, across all the projects that are being managed in these variety of tools. The good news for everybody is that there's never been so many great choices for project management and work management tools. But the bad news is it's hard to keep track of all their work. It's not doing the organization as a whole a favor and by the limited capabilities it provides. It doesn't roll up and align with an overarching strategy, et cetera. So companies are looking to kind of get more efficient, streamline cost, get deeper expertise within the systems that they have, but it's proving harder and harder if not everybody's on the same project management bandwagon, but that's probably not in the cards today for what people want to do, okay? So the state of project management today, and we depict this with the vision of silos and different tools that people are using in different departments. And the array of departments is even bigger than that. But ideally, in a perfect world, you'd have everybody using the same tool and managing things to get work done and having a central repository of data. But in most companies, the software is really procured on a more departmental or on a team basis. For example, one might like Smartsheet. Another one might like to use the Microsoft suite of project and work management tools. Others are doing more agile stuff in Jira or Azure DevOps, or some like the ease to spin up for individual teams of Monday.com, but maybe the needs of the whole organization aren't being met this way. Now, at the core, your leaders and your executives really don't care necessarily how you get things done, but if they have a hard time getting a clear sense of status in the work across all of it, then they have an issue. And so the question is, how do we get there, right? And in this day and age and culture, executives can't just force everyone to adopt one tool or one set of processes without full-scale mutiny or at least resistance that may undercut our success. So how do we get the insight and visibility we're looking for? How do we get that one source of truth, yet still allow the latitude of your different people and different constituencies in your organization to be able to work the way they want, or even more, work the way they need to do the types of projects and work that they do in their organization? Here's just a sample of what one client gave us a little while back about the proliferation of tools. And this isn't even a full picture of everything that's being used. But if I look at the disciplines down the left-hand side of demand management, portfolio management, project management, time management, reporting, and then across the top, the different departments that we were trying to bring data together for, you can see here that a lot of data, a lot of tools, hence a lot of pockets of information that makes it difficult to have it in one place. And even some of it is not even dynamic or static. When people see a PowerPoint logo up here, sometimes people are using those tools just to relate status and progress to people, and it maybe has no connection to anything live at all. To compound this, what drives some of this proliferation of tools is different execution methodologies, not just choice. So, agile organizations continue to try to get more agile and more responsive, and agile continues to grow as a discipline for the way to do projects. But some types of projects, it seems, more facilities, construction, and other types of things aren't conducive necessarily to that, and waterfall is still being used. Some people are using variations of agile methodologies like scrum fall, or whatever other terms people are using for a combination of agile and waterfall. And many people are doing their own personalized cherry-picked versions of all of the above, let alone people that are doing continuous delivery. So with that kind of compounds the things that we have to be able to support these things, not just the tools, but the different disciplines and methodologies themselves. Now, if we look at what an organization might need, right? You might have different methodologies, and down below we're depicting, iterative and waterfall and variations of that down below for different initiatives. And the tools that are being used may be a variety of things, maybe more agile-oriented tools like Azure DevOps and Jira, maybe more waterfall-oriented tools like Microsoft Project. Even just OnePlan that we're going to talk about today has its own tools. But the key there is the teams, have certain needs and certain ways that they need or want to work, but leadership still needs to be able to get visibility at the portfolio level or even aligned up with strategies, objectives, and key results, etc. So this is something we need to be able to find a solution for. Now, even if people are all agile, say, for example, that doesn't change things necessarily. Now, everybody may still be doing agile methodologies, but there still might be a variation of tools that people are using for those things. But some of the challenge becomes that the teams themselves, what they look at as far as metrics and data that they use to manage on the execution level, maybe are things like burn ups and burn downs and velocity charts, cumulative flow diagrams. Maybe they are using weighted shortest job first. Maybe they look at bug trends. But leadership oftentimes still wants to see the language of the business, maybe more financial metrics like ROI, net present value, and internal rate of return. And the idea there is that how do we get and meet the needs of all the constituencies at different levels of the organization and even departmentally, horizontally across the organization. So if we don't bridge this gap, the information silos that are being created breed increased costs and inefficiencies. How do we bring that together? Well, if we allow it to happen unchecked, the only way it's going to happen is if we do manual mashups of data from the multiple tools and data sources that we have. And then after we have that data all mashed up and maybe in a common database or spreadsheet, whatever it might be, then there's the manual report creation from that data, the formatting, the updating, and all that stuff, and then package for the different audiences at different levels, leadership, the execution level, the portfolio managers, etc. And then with all these different tools, sometimes people are compelled in many organizations to put the exact same data into different tool sets and maybe even 3, 4, 5 different tools, the same data. Now that duplication of data entry is not only time consuming, it's prone to error and inconsistency. Also, this disconnected information makes it difficult for us to remain accurate and current with our data across the board, let alone having to chase team members for status and updates across a variety of places where we're expecting them to input it. So hence, tracking completeness and timeliness of submissions is problematic. And what we often see is sometimes people then, with these silos, have to do resource capacity planning completely off to the side in its own separate spreadsheet or data silo that's completely disconnected from the reality of the execution of where the work is actually being performed, and the statusing and the scheduling and those types of things. So once again, none of this sounds ideal or none of this is efficient at its core. So the future state of project management may look something like this. There'll likely be pockets of use and silos around particular project management and execution tools moving forward. It's just the state of it is. We have easy access to cloud tools today. And there are different needs for different parts of the organization. If we want them to be as effective as they possibly can, we probably have to allow some of that latitude. Now, we could do some rationalization and minimize those number of tools, but there may be some good need for having separate tools. Now, some tools do things very well for certain departments and their disciplines, and their teams don't want to give away that functionality, so they don't want to regress or have things that get deprecated from them. And taking the project management tools from the teams that won't part with them and integrating them to create a single strategy of view across it all solves multiple problems. If we try to harness it, promote their use, but then leverage that data in a productive way, maybe we can bridge this gap. And so if we do this right, teams can get the software they love, the C-suite gets deeper insights, the program and PMOs and EPMOs get the data they want, and then we can prioritize the work most importantly with a tool like OnePlan that we're going to talk about here today. The graphic I see over on the right is depicting a variety of different tools, and by no means is this exhaustive, but some of the more common ones that we have: Smartsheet, Microsoft Planner, formerly Project for the Web, Microsoft Project Professional on the desktop, with the application, and Azure DevOps, for example. But having them being used at the execution level and having them all fold into data that's leveraged at the portfolio level may be the best of all worlds here. Now, OnePlan is provided as an AI-enabled strategic portfolio and work management platform. And what it does is allows you to bridge these gaps and optimize these things and work across the board, whether it be connecting strategy to execution, optimizing resource and capacity planning, delivering real-time insights across all that data, having one central hub of data that we need without manual mashup, centralizing the financial aspects of these things. Now, the focus of our webinar today are these last two over here, of unified tools and teams and support hybrid work and delivery models. We'll go into those focus areas today, particularly, and we'll just touch on the others maybe a little bit as we go through the demonstration. So if we think about end-to-end capabilities in OnePlan, there's the upfront demand piece, outlining a strategy and OKRs over, at the outset, having leadership do that and set the course for the organization and the expectations across the board. OnePlan has those capabilities. Having an innovation portal for ideation and requests that come in, and hopefully vet them and approve them with the context of the strategies that are outlined and whether or not they align with those. We might have other assets like products and applications and business processes and business capabilities that might need to be aligned or modified in order to do those things. All things need to be considered in that upfront demand management. Now, on the planning side, we have to choose a portfolio. We have to select things, right? And we have to do those within the context of our resource capacity. We also have to do those in the context of the financial constraints and budgets that we have. And we also, as we know, things change very rapidly in the current marketplace. We have to have good what-if scenario modeling so we can evaluate alternatives as the situation on the ground changes, whether they be internal things that are changing, maybe things in the market are changing, maybe technological advances are changing, and we have to meet those head on in order to succeed. And then ultimately, once we decide what to do, we got to execute well. And that could be a variety of things. And you can see here at the top section for plan managers on this execution side, OnePlan itself has the work planning capability in here. It has its own waterfall planner. It has its own agile planner where we can do backlogs and sprints. But in the reality of the things and the topics we're talking about here today, people may have these other tools. And you see those icons down below, right? The work plan and the agile planner. These might be the common tools that people are using: Planner, Project, Smartsheet, Wrike, Monday, Azure DevOps, Jira, Trello, etc. And the idea there is that we can accommodate those things and let those things go. We don't have to let our achievement of visibility across it all and decision making and governance across it all be limited by the fact that we can't keep the change. That used to be a barrier. It is no longer with OnePlan. We can bring that data in and achieve the good portfolio management benefits that we seek without having to fight that battle necessarily. And on the analysis side of things, the payback is really the report and the visibility you get, whether it be individual status reports on projects in a common way, regardless of what tool sets are being used, dashboards that can be done for various levels, whether it be executives, whether it be the PMO, whether it be individual projects, etc. And then how all this stuff ties together and the visualizing all that stuff is very important for organizations today. Now, of course, today you can't have a presentation without bringing up AI. And OnePlan does have its own built-in AI assistant called Sophia GPT, and it's designed to leverage and give you assistance on a variety of fronts. And we can talk a little bit more about that today. Ultimately, we want the tools to be able to select the right work to do and then do the work right with the right tools that are conducive to the job at hand, but yet be able to harness that information for comprehensive decision making, etc. So if we just take this another step further, what you want is, if you see the integration side, the piece shown down below there, you might have a variety of tools feeding into OnePlan, okay? It is based on the Microsoft cloud and on Microsoft technology and seamlessly fits into your Microsoft ecosystem. Now, what we do have is the governance piece. So now that we can provide intake and governance and strategy alignment across all of it, even though different execution tools are being used, but we can also, instead of having everybody march lockstep in the same way on all things, we can configure and have, and we'll show today, solution areas within OnePlan that allows your different constituencies to maybe have a slightly different user experience depending on the way they like to look at the world or the way they need to look at the world. So by doing that, these solution areas maybe allows a user experience that provides some, let's just say, diversity of that across the different people and for their needs and for their preferences. Now, when I talk about these integrations and these connectors of different tools. I'm not talking about, one-off coding that we're doing from API to API. OnePlan provides you with its own connector platform. It's not even a third-party platform that you might see out there from people out there, things with like Boomi and other things that are out there. You don't have to subscribe to a third-party integration or middleware type of solution. OnePlan has its own. And this integration hub allows you to connect in the way that makes sense for you, whether they be agile tools for software development, whether they be work management or project management tools, whether it be financial data you got to pull in from your financial ERP systems, data from your CRM systems, if potentially that might be your intake because contracts that you get turned into your projects. You might even already have other ideation things in place or other strategy tools in place, and we can connect and leverage that data in the context of overall strategic portfolio management. So the idea there is that we can do this with a pre-built, productized platform and connectors that are readily available to our customers. I think one of the other reasons that people come to us is that we are built in the Microsoft cloud. We leverage and connect very easily with the overall Microsoft ecosystem, and it's consistent with their use case and everything else that's going on, so that it's a very seamless user experience for everybody that gets on board. Now, our AI, it's interesting. We're all using AI to a certain degree these days. ChatGPT, Copilot, Microsoft. Well, OnePlan has a purpose-built AI assistant that leverages Microsoft's Azure OpenAI as its large language model, which is in the Microsoft cloud as opposed to out there in the open internet with ChatGPT. So it provides some additional compliance and security and things that you might want. But Sophia has also been trained on the overall strategic portfolio management disciplines, project management disciplines, as well as the OnePlan capabilities that are in here. So it's trained specifically for this purpose. But cool about it is that without learning your data, it will leverage your data that you have in OnePlan to help formulate its response to your prompts and to the answers that it gives you in different aspects, so that it leverages the contextual data that you have, meaning it's got the best of all worlds, the large language model specific training it's gotten, and then leveraging your specific data without capturing or learning from that data. Pretty cool best of all worlds. So with that, I'd like to show you some of these things in action. As I go through here, I'm going to start today because the focus of this is how do we bring this all together into a common view. And if I'm in, say, an enterprise portfolio area, some of the payback that we want to get is ultimately getting reporting. Now picture what I showed you in the slides of all these different tool sets, bringing their data, coming in together into OnePlan, and they're coming into one or more portfolios here in the enterprise portfolio. We can segment this by different security levels and access so that you can actually have control over who can see and do what within the solution. But ultimately, the payback for people is data that they can actually make decisions with, whether it be an overall portfolio summary of how the various portfolios are doing, or overall project summaries. OnePlan has its own dashboarding capabilities that can leverage this data that gets aggregated all into OnePlan and be able to look at these things in a variety of ways, be able to have views that give us the information we're looking for. Even though this is a report, we can actually go in here and actually drill at any given point in time and pop out the details of those projects and get into the different aspects of those right from the report itself. So healthy for decision support. Ultimately, the payback is right here. By the way, we also have about a pack of about 50 different Power BI reports that if you want to leverage these things in Power BI and have people access the reports and data that way, they can do that as well. But ultimately, we can create as many different dashboards and different widgets and tiles in here that you want to fashion the dashboards in all aspects of the tool that you want to see. Now, if I go back to the list views, as we call them, for the transactional data entry and things like that that you might do within the tool itself, let me go back to a portfolio summary view that I started with here. And in here, I'm looking at number of portfolios I have, and this could be addressing the needs of different parts of the organization. Like we talked, it could be departmental, it could be business unit oriented, it could be by the types of projects that you have. But the idea is it's up to you the way you want to look at the world. And here, for example, you can structure what we call a primary plan type hierarchy. In this case, I've got portfolios and programs within the portfolios. I've got projects which are more waterfall oriented, epics, and with features in them that are more agile oriented, and I got some engagements in here that are more professional services oriented, right? But this is just an example. Whatever the way you look at the world and how you'd like this hierarchy structured is completely up to you, though you're not limited to just that hierarchy, and I'll show that to you in a little bit. Now, at the enterprise portfolio level, if I break this out and show you, for example, in this particular portfolio that there's a program within there, and then I have projects and epics within that portfolio, here I've got an aggregation of a lot of different things. But if you'll notice the symbology or the icons off to the left-hand side, it's telling me that I'm connected to other tools that are non-OnePlan. Now, as I mentioned, we don't depend on these tools, but we can leverage the data you want very easily with our connector platform. For example, I've got one here that just shows a Teams icon that's telling me that I'm using Teams for content and collaboration here, in addition to the project and portfolio management data. Here I'm using Smartsheet for my plans. Here I'm using Microsoft Planner Premium. Here I'm using Wrike. Here I'm using Microsoft Project on the desktop. Here I'm using Azure DevOps. And we're going to drill into some specific use cases a little later here in the demonstration. But the key there is that it's all coming together in one common portfolio with automated connections and synchronizations across the board. Now, the cool part here is once we get that data in here, we can look at the data in a variety of different ways. For example, here I'm looking at a portfolio summary that's more KPI oriented and whether or not we're on track on these different KPIs and some high level information. I could also look at it and say, for example, by the way we are aligned to different aspects in the system. For example, the objectives and key results. I can take a look and see, what key results I'm actually linked to, which associated products that might be required for me to succeed on this. What associated applications that need to support my success in this as well that we need to monitor and control along the way. The key there is we can have all those interrelations that we talked about with strategic alignment, as well as associations with other enterprise or business architecture elements that we need to work with. A very needed part in the move towards overall strategic portfolio management today. We can also have things like prioritization views, for example, where as we go through here, now we have an intake process, but for example, you may on an ongoing basis have a prioritization score that's based upon some formula that you're using. You might be doing it in spreadsheets today. But for example, our formula might say, okay, strategic alignment is part of that. How well does this strategically align with our objectives? How well does it lower costs or increase revenue? How well does it improve employee satisfaction? How much does it reduce risk? Now, you have calculations behind these that are easily configurable that will drive a prioritization score so you can evaluate these projects in a common valuation method and look at those as you prioritize those things. And as we look at selecting them in the first place, as well as maybe ongoing when we do what if scenario analysis, look at how we can, let's just say, rejigger these things as situations change and evaluate our alternatives. Now, what's cool about this, if you notice, I don't have the plan type hierarchy of portfolio and program showing here. It's more of a flat list of projects in this particular view. And what's cool about that is it gives me the flexibility to look at this and group it, filter it, and summarize it in different ways. For example, maybe instead of the primary hierarchy, I want to look at this thing by, say, business unit. And if I want to look at this by business unit, now I've got that entire portfolio with the prioritization scores grouped by the business unit. Operations, capital planning, product development, etc. I can even maybe nest it and do it in multiples. So for example, I might come down here and I'd say, okay, now I want to look at also the executive sponsor in each of those business units who's basically supporting this. And now I've got some that show me no executive sponsor of record. Some I've seen the executive sponsor here within the business unit, and I've got it summarized and grouped by those particular things. And the thing is, you could use any data element that either we provide or that you actually come up with. We can use any of those data elements as grouping or filtering parameters to fashion different either system-wide views or personal views that you devise for yourself. So once again, a lot of flexibility on the way you'd like to look at this. Now, for the more agile-oriented people, we also have board views of this data. So for example, as we're looking through this, we might decide what the columns are, what the swim lanes are, et cetera, and how we have these colored. This one, I've got the different projects by state. I can see one that by the state here it's in red, which means it's off track. Do I want to drill in? Do I want to look at the details around that or go specifically to that project? I can do that right from these particular views at any given point in time, so I can see maybe why these things are falling off track, okay? And look at those and status those. I might have a view that says, let's look at them by projects by business unit. Now look at here and I can see I really don't have anything going on in finance and human resources right now, right? I might go in here and look at it by, I don't know, how well it's by strategic alignment and how well they strategically align. And even fashion in things like dependencies and look at those across the board and see how we're dependent on other things in here. And I could even put in swim lanes, like for example, I don't know, by the state of the project. And here, for example, now I can see the proposed stuff versus the active, all the way on down through what's been closed, what's been put on hold, etc. And at any given point in time, I can either hover or drill into the details on any one of these particular projects or initiatives. Now, the other piece in here, we have roadmap views for people that are more timeline oriented. And I can come in here and look at this very, very easily and just say, let's look at projects by business unit, for example. And now I've got the swim lane set up. This one's colored by status, but what if I was interested in how we're doing on budgets? And I want to just basically say, let me color it by financial health, and I can see which ones are at risk financial health-wise, et cetera. Or by effort health, are we overrunning our resource utilization on these things, and look at them in different ways. Once again, flexible portfolios that by swim lanes and by the way we color these things and the way we organize them in our date ranges, we have a lot of flexibility on the way we'd like to look at this. Now let's keep in context that this is one central view, but not all of these projects or not all of these initiatives are necessarily coming from the same execution tool. But yet we're getting this one view of everything in one place as a natural output of the process. Okay. If I go back to the list view and I go back to the portfolio summary that we looked at originally, right? And I expand this out, just I think I'll just throw in here, now that I have all these projects coming in from a variety of different sources of execution tools, I can still leverage all the capabilities of OnePlan right in here, for example. Like if I wanted to use Sophia, my AI assistant with the data that I have in here, I could come in here and ask it. I could pin different prompts in here that I want. I can add unique prompts in here at all. But maybe I'll ask it to say, could you examine the trends and provide a summary of the current state of the portfolios? And in this case, it's going to go look at that. And based on the data that's in here, it's going to give me some things on how we're doing in the operational excellence portfolio, an assessment of how we're doing there on the professional services delivery portfolio, et cetera. I could go in here and look at it in a variety of different fashions and look and say, if budget cuts are needed, right? Which project should we consider canceling or putting on hold based on strategic importance, ROI, and progress to date? And it'll give us some suggestions in that regard, some analysis. Ultimately, we're making the decisions on this, but why not get assistance on the analysis and factor in all the data points that we might miss in some of the things that we do? So basically, projects with significant issues, projects that are on hold, projects with critical issues, and it's giving us the rationale that we should consider when we make our decisions here. Now, ultimately, I mentioned the flexibility of the different solution areas that people can look at. So, for example, a view like this with multiple portfolios across the organization would be conducive to, say, the executives or to the EPMO, for example. But what if I have a real special interest and my focus is just a subset of this? Well, if I'm part of the professional services organization, I might look at this data a little differently. For example, I might decide to look at this by the accounts or the customer, right? And the different engagements or projects that I'm doing in support of them, right? And as we look at these, we can have different data points and things like that we capture about these different elements. If I'm in product development, I might want to look at this by, for example, by product line and then the individual products within them. And I might even have details pages that are different than a project. For example, I might have a product vision canvas and things like that in here that I put the descriptions in there and manage the overall total cost of ownership of this particular application or platform as we go through, or product, I should say. And then on the application side, the same things. We have business applications that we manage that maybe are supporting different business capabilities that we have to upgrade all the time. And we might have different epics and projects that are supporting all those things. Once again, my lens might just be this, the different applications and what's supporting them. And what's kind of cool about this is I can look at very easily, how these things all interrelate at any given point in time. I can visualize any dependencies that I have, predecessors or successors, but also look at how all these things interrelate. So this application is actually supporting the achievement of an objective and a key result, which appear to be at risk right now. But we also have different projects and epics that are aligned with this, as well as different products that are aligned with this. And at any given point in time, if I look at things that might be jeopardizing my success, for example, that's red, I can look at the details about that at any given point in time and have my finger on the pulse. Once again, the execution of this may be coming from a different project management tool, but the overarching pieces that we're managing from a portfolio basis, right? Those things are now all done consistently across the entire set of work that's being done within the organization. All right. Now, let's go back to a portfolio list view. And let me just drill into a specific project. Now, in this, the aspects that are in here are consistent within OnePlan, even though some of the data may be coming from elsewhere. Now, this one's coming just from OnePlan, and you can devise what we call a details page, which is really a summary of all the things that are going on, how you categorize it with metadata and data, maybe a business case that came over from the original request that came in, how it was prioritized or how it's currently prioritized, summary data on the schedule, the financials, the KPIs, etc. You can fashion these and divine with drag and drop form building right in here from configuration, simple configuration, the sections and the data points that you want to see, as well as a life cycle or phases or stages that you'd like to have in there, all tied to workflow. We can actually track the financials in here consistently, regardless of what execution tool you're using. We can track the resource planning and capacity and what we're looking at here, regardless of what we're using for that tool. And then on the work plan side of things, you can decide what you want to do here. For example, if you built this plan in OnePlan, you could actually use templates. That could be your own personal templates, your own organizational online templates. You could import data from other sources. You can even ask AI to build a sample plan for you based on the data that you have in here or some parameters that you give it. But in this particular case, this plan was built right here in OnePlan via a template, and you could have chosen to use any of the connectors that have been enabled in this environment to be the source of the data that you see here. And I'll show you some that are actually connected here shortly, okay? But a key point here is that for the flexibility that you have here, we have different work types, just like we had different plan types at the portfolio level. The work types within a schedule, allow us to have a schedule work type that this one here is more conducive to waterfall or hybrid scheduling. But maybe you have something that's more agile oriented where you actually want to just have a backlog of features and user stories. Now, once again, it could be built right in OnePlan, or you could be deriving it from tools like Azure DevOps and Jira, should you want to. And we'll show you some examples of that here shortly. But the idea here is that these capabilities are in here, as well as tracking things like your issues, your risks, your change requests, your key decisions, and be able to assign those to people just like any other element of work that people can be responsible for, okay? So the idea here is that these are the aspects that we look at within a plan. Now, the cool part is whether we're bringing this in from Microsoft Project, whether we're bringing it in from Smartsheet, Monday.com, or whatever, the reporting then would be consistent. For example, a status report, right? You can fashion a status report format that's pulling in all the data elements, regardless of where it's coming from, into a common format. And then when each period you submit this, you can add your own narrative for each period, et cetera, that's important for that particular period, and keep the history in here for trending and other types of analysis that you might want to do. We can even, for non-OnePlan users, export this to PDF, to Word documents, and send it out in the body of an email. But the key there is that once again, this reporting becomes a natural output of the process, with you just adding your tweaks and modifications to this without having to create this in, say, a PowerPoint slide or some of the things that people are doing today, okay? We also have individual reporting on things like insights, et cetera, where, for example, you can get alerted to things that require your attention and keep you in compliance. You can have individual project dashboards that basically give you some of the key elements regarding how we're doing on this project from a variety of different fashions, whether they be tasks, how we're doing on issues, how we're doing on a variety of different things. Once again, consistent reporting and measurements, regardless of where the execution data is coming from, okay? If I go back to the portfolio and I look at this, let me drill into some plans here that aren't being built or executed on in OnePlan itself. For example, those of you that are Microsoft shops, Microsoft has just rebranded their project for the web and it's all called Planner now. And Planner with premium plans is now what's formally called Project for the Web. If I drill into this plan that's connected to that, let me go directly, I don't have to go into the whole project, I can go directly to the work plan on that. And as I look at the schedule, I can see a schedule that's here and see the icons to the left here. These show me that all these are being derived from Planner, okay? And this Planner has an active connection in here, right? That basically, depending on the schedule that we set up for it, is basically going to be updating the data in OnePlan directly on a schedule that you define without the user having to remember to synchronize. The idea here is that this plan is now going to be present and rolling up into the other data in the portfolio in OnePlan itself. So once again, a standard connector that we have that's available to you, okay? If I go to let's just say I drill into Azure DevOps. Maybe there's a more agile oriented project and I drill into the work plan for this Azure DevOps project. And now I'm in the backlog work type here. And as I can see, I've got features and user stories and bugs and issues that are coming across, right? But I can see that the user stories and the features are coming over from Azure DevOps. In this particular case, I can see I have an active connection to Azure DevOps. And when I open this up, it takes me right to the epic that it's aligned with, right? The Azure DevOps data like I would see, but with some interesting additions. Not only are we synchronizing the data back to OnePlan, we have extensions here that allow you to actually access the OnePlan data right from within Azure DevOps without doing task or application switching. So for example, for some stuff specific to this particular epic, I can actually open up OnePlan and actually look at the elements there. For example, I can see what's already been synced over in the work plan, okay, to that regard. I can look at the resource plan that's over in there, something that isn't done within Azure DevOps. I can look at the work plan. I can look at the financials. I can look at the details page that I showed you early on and do that all right from here from within Azure DevOps without having to leave. We also have more global things from OnePlan available to you with our extensions that come into Azure DevOps. For example, let's just say I work on projects that all aren't being tracked within Azure DevOps. We have multiple tool sets. Well, that thing about going to multiple tools I talked about in the slides to do your updates, what if I was able to come to one My Work area? And in that My Work area, be able to provide updates and status from one particular place, regardless of where the work is being executed. If it's all connected to OnePlan, I might have a project I'm working on in Jira, one in Planner Premium. Maybe I've got one that I've got a task in here in a Monday.com, or I've got a task on here in Trello or Asana. I can actually update all those things right here with their progress, with their notes of explanation, with comments, etc., all from one place, and provide all that feedback without having to jump around into different tools. I can either do this My Work directly in OnePlan, or in this case, I'm just happening to show it to you from within Azure DevOps. And if you're reporting time, for example, I can go right into my timesheet from here and update the timesheet, etc., right from here. So the key there is that more efficiencies by not jumping around and doing a lot of task switching or tool switching in order to get different things done. So not only are we integrating data, we're integrating the user experience. Another cool part here is, right now I've been showing you some cloud tools like Azure DevOps and Planner, formerly Project for the Web. Another cloud tool, we could be going into the work plan for a Smartsheet derived plan. And in this particular case, I see a very detailed plan in here, and I can also see that I have an active connection to Smartsheet. If I open that item up, it's going to take me, if I have the rights to go there, right, to basically go in here and see the synchronization of what's been done here and be able to see that whatever I do here in Azure DevOps, in Smartsheet, is going to synchronize back over into here. Now, I could do a litany of these things, and I'll talk about some of the tools by name that we have built-in connectors for. But the idea here is this flexibility that we talked about at the end user level, at the department or the team level, is achievable. And still we can achieve that overall portfolio management, visibility, and decision making and governance that we need at the portfolio level if we bring that all into OnePlan. Okay. A little variation. There's been a lot of changes with Microsoft Project. People that use Microsoft Project on the desktop, the fat client application, the Windows application, it's not a cloud tool. Or they've been told that there's no longer going to be any investment in Project Online, and they may be thinking about where their next home might be. Well, if I look at this and I went to a plan here, and this plan being derived from an active connection to Microsoft Project, well, it's not a cloud tool, but we still have a mechanism to do that. So if you like to use Microsoft Project and you have a lot of time invested in thought process into those tools, into that tool for your project plans, we can actually connect to it from a variety of places. In this particular one, I'm connecting it to a local file on my computer, but it could be in the cloud, it could be in Project Online, etc. And it's basically connected to this Microsoft Project plan that this may look familiar to some of you. Now, what we do here, since it's not a cloud tool, we put basically an add-in set of capabilities in here that would emulate what you're doing with Project Online today. So when that gets retired, you have the ability here to publish the data from this plan into a plan in OnePlan and also receive updates back from OnePlan. It's going to ask me who I am because I haven't been logged in here in a while. I'm in here as Daniel Williams. And the idea is if there was any updates that came back from OnePlan on this thing, it would then give me a list of things to accept those things into the plan. So the idea here is we have a bi-directional byplay between Microsoft Project on the desktop, Project Professional, Project Standard, and be able to actually bring that data into a portfolio, even though it may be in its own separate file. Okay. So the key there is there's an answer for this too as well. Now, other things that we have connectors with Jira, Monday.com, Asana, Wrike, Trello, okay? So we're basically going through all the popular ones that you see out there, and many of them have shortcomings when it comes to portfolio management. We can then bolster that, give you the more robust portfolio management capabilities you're looking for, yet still leverage the nuanced things that they have on the execution level that you'd like to still leverage. Okay. Now, probably one thing I'd like to show you about this, that from just a credibility perspective, when I talk about our OneConnect connectors, and this isn't just some custom coded stuff that's pulled together from a professional services perspective when we implement. If I basically come in here and I look at the connectors, we can establish from a wide variety of connectors in here. So for example, as I look at the connectors that for Azure DevOps, for example, that is part of this particular demo that I'm working on, right? I can go in here and look at how it's set up. It really is a platform, and this is a console for your administrators to actually work with that. So as I come in, you establish connection between OnePlan and the application that's there. OnePlan generates an authentication key that you would put in. Azure DevOps uses personal access tokens and other methods to do that and gets the two applications talking to one another. It's not specific user dependent. So it makes it more universal in the way it can be used. We can then map the things that we need to. In this case, we were mapped to epics in this particular case, but then the items that we're bringing into the work plans, this is where we bring in the things that need to be updated as far as being able to look at things like mappings that we might go to from a backlog into OnePlan and be able to map those things either single directional or bi-directional. We also have a schedule that we can decide how often we'd like these things to update. Do we want it to update hourly, twice a day, daily, whatever it might be? And as hopefully you saw when I showed you the connections themselves, you can also bring things on demand if you want to, but having a schedule precludes the user from having to remember to synchronize these things into the portfolio management system or into OnePlan. So the key there is that we can make all these things happen in a very automated way, so it's easy for the user and also to get the net benefit that we're looking for on the roll up into the portfolio. Now, once that stuff all brought in, there's other aspects of this. For example, this strategy area that we have that we want to align with, we can build our objectives and key results in here. And now all the different projects and epics that are in here that might be aligned with those key results, like we showed you in the visualizer, we can visualize that and see what's all related to these things right from a strategy area. We also have an innovation or ideation portal that allows me to capture ideas from across the organization, right? Have people vote on them. We can prioritize them. We can select them. We can even promote them at any given point in time through reorganization to a project or some other element in here. And we can promote it in here and carry forth all the data without having to start over again in a project management tool from an ideation tool. So once again, that's there, and we can actually make decisions that align with the strategy and with the prioritization scheme that the organization has put together for prioritizing those things. And then ultimately, because we bring all these projects together in one place, one of the key benefits is resource capacity planning. And we can look at it in terms of things like hours or percentages of allocation or how many full-time equivalents. And at a high level, I can see that, on the developer side of things, I've got a demand for 9 in May, and I only have a capacity of 5 in my organization. And what that's made up of is a combination of things, whether it be specific people or even things that might still be generically assigned as developer, and I haven't really put a name to those things yet. The cool part is OnePlan can actually help you, regardless of whether this came in from Jira or Smartsheet or Microsoft Project or whatever. I could go in there and look for candidates to replace this generic with a named individual and see who might have bandwidth in this time frame down below that I can replace that generic with a named individual. I could do the same thing by trying to replace overloaded individuals, right? For example, here I see Ehrlich has got a lot of red here where he's over allocated for a 4-month period. Well, what projects is he on, right? What's bringing that forth? Well, I can just see that he's on way too many things, and I'm going to have to give him some relief in this time frame. So maybe I got to find, projects that I need to be able to take him off of, right, and do that same candidate replacement of an individual with another individual as we go through here. The cool part about OnePlan, you can do top-down capacity planning even before you have a schedule by allocating, say, FTEs or percentages of allocation or hours. But we also can roll up from the bottom up a view of all the different things from the different plans. So for example, if I go into a developer, I can see now that I've got things across the board. I got some things coming in on an ADO project. I got Ehrlich with some things coming in on other projects. I got Jared working on some things, and these could all be coming from different sources. Here, Kevin's got some planner. He's got a Monday.com project. He's got Work Planner, and all the different tasks that are in there are basically rolling up from a bottom-up perspective for a resource capacity view from a bottom-up perspective. And the cool part here is that you could actually compare, for example, what we thought we were going to do from a top-down perspective, which you might do early on in your process, right? But then be able to compare and see where is the schedule different from what we originally thought. So here we thought we were going to use some business analyst time at 0.6, but the schedules are saying we only need 38% of our bandwidth, right, for all that. So the idea here is we can do some very robust capacity planning centrally without using spreadsheets, bringing in the data from the various execution tools and project management tools and really making it a more cohesive thing that we can do. And the last thing I'll cover is the what-if scenario planning. And on the what-if scenario planning, you can create different models for different parts of the organization. And a model is really about what candidates you'd like to consider in the model. And so here I've got some proposed, active, and on hold projects and initiatives that I want to consider. And in that, I might look at what resources would be required. And I see I have over allocations in there on the resource side. I might have budget constraints, which I can see that I'm significantly over my budget allocations on a monthly basis or possibly even on a total basis. And then I can start evaluating different scenarios. And just to get to the quick on this, I'll just go through some things there where there's 34 possible projects I'm considering. But maybe I have a limit of, say, a budget of $3.5 million. And now I've got to select and deselect projects to help me fit within that constraint. So for example, if I look at this scenario as I see right now in the state that it's in, I can basically see for the period, I'm still a little bit over. I'm down from way up above that to down to now 3.9 on this. Now, should I take out another project that maybe doesn't? Now I'm getting down close to the 3.5 level into my budget that I have. And I can do a combination of selection and or looking at time phasing such that I might say, all right, maybe I have to deselect one project, but maybe one of my answers to the scenario might be, let me take this proposed project and potentially have to drag that out to another quarter and actually see how that delays and what we're doing and take some more dollars out of the period that we're looking at. Ultimately, what we're going to do is compare those things and maybe do different scenarios. Here we have a $3.5 million and a $4 million scenario, but really we can say, all right, in the $4 million, I can do 3 more projects, right? But maybe for another $5 million, it looks like I might be able to get, for another $1.5 million, I can get another $5 million in benefit. It might be worth my while to try and find the funding for that. I might want to look at how these things interrelate with one another. Our visualizer basically comes in and tells me, all right, out of what I selected in this scenario, there's some predecessors that I didn't select. Do I really need to have these predecessors? Should I reconsider and substitute these for other things that I already selected? And then also look at that runway that we talked about on how this stuff is all going to fit together. So the idea here is that we have models to be able to compare these things, look at things like bubble charts that we traditionally see in portfolio management, where I'm comparing, say, prioritization versus benefits, and see what I selected and see where they fit on the matrix, and maybe even interject the things I didn't select to see if I might reconsider those as well. Ultimately, some tools in here, and we have some other webinars that we go into this in a lot more depth, but I wanted to show you that even though the execution data is coming from a variety of different tools and sources and different silos of information, we're bringing it all together so we can cohesively manage the intake, the alignment with strategy, the prioritization and reprioritization through modeling, and focus in on things like our capacity planning, et cetera, and get reporting comprehensively across it all. Okay. So with that, let's summarize. So we talked about how organizations are using a variety of project management tools today across different parts of the organization. It breeds silos of data and the inherent problems that go along with those. That OnePlan does provide the ability for users to keep working in their preferred execution tools that are appropriate for their role, maturity, or the type of work that they're doing, but still provides the visibility that you want. It supports a variety of execution methodologies. We showed you some waterfall, we showed you some agile, and some hybrid actually. And then we're minimizing duplication of effort because we had that one my work area and that one source of the tools that you were working on to do those things. It's a modern user experience. It supports the needs of the PMO and the EPMO in addition to accommodating the desires and the needs of the individual contributors in this whole thing. So ultimately, like I showed you in the slide earlier on, the teams continue to be agile, but leadership gets the visibility and the metrics they require. Now, OnePlan, we focus on the PPM and SPM disciplines and the solutions around that. We are a Microsoft strategic partner. We have been for a lot of years. We've been named either the Global PPM Partner of the Year or a finalist 5 years running. We're recognized by the analysts like Gartner, Forrester in the Forrester Wave, software reviews by Infotech Research, et cetera. And we also have a very secure platform. Not only is it because we're built in the Microsoft Cloud and you get all the security and compliance you get from that, but we're also ourselves individually with our solution and our processes. We are SOC 2 certified and compliant. We also have ISO 27001 and 27701. We're backed by private equity, so we're strong and we're growing. And really, we have customer testimonials. If you're wondering who's doing this, you can go to our website. You'll get a copy of these slides and look at some of the video testimonials out there of what benefits people are getting and actually doing these things we talked about today. We are a full service firm. We do provide the software itself, but we also provide advisory services to help you get what you want. We have a business strategy workshop that can help you determine what it might take to get you from where you're at in your current state to getting into a tool like this or into a solution like this. We provide full implementation services, education and training, and ongoing customer support so that your adoption and success is a priority to us. We do webinars like this all the time. So we have ones coming up. We do demonars, which are like demo webinars each week. We also have specific topics like this that I do often and others in my organization. The next one we're going to do next week on the 21st is the PMO of tomorrow, connecting tools and teams and strategy. So we're going to get more on the more overarching piece, not just the diversity of tools aspect of things today. So just go to oneplan.ai/webinars and you can register for that, or we have a whole library of on-demand webinars that are recordings of one we've already done in the past. And we have a whole set of topics that might interest you. We also do free trials. So if you go to oneplans.ai/solutions, you can actually get a free trial. We're happy to provide complimentary chaperoning and assistance to get the outcomes and answer the questions that you might have regarding the trial. So take us advantage on that. We'd love to engage with you. It's also available up on Microsoft AppSource as a Microsoft partner, a strategic partner. Our stuff's available up there on AppSource as well. So the next steps, advisory, we might help you with a free business strategy workshop, free trial and support. If you're not there yet, I gave a very high-level demo on a very focused set of things today. If you want something personalized, one-on-one that matches your requirements and your needs and gaps you're trying to fill, we're happy to schedule that for you. Contact us at contact@oneplan.ai, or just do more research about us on www.oneplan.ai. Like I mentioned before, we would love to engage with you and help you determine whether or not this is something that might be beneficial to your organization. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you for your time. I know it's valuable for you to squeeze this in. You can either reach out to the contact email that I gave just earlier, or if you want to talk individually, reach out to me at jpatterson@oneplan.ai. Appreciate your time. Have a great day.